Ever had that my last pair of contacts panic? Or worse, been completely out and stuck wearing those bulky glasses? Now I don't even worry about it because my next set is always on the way from 1-800-CONTACTS. They're the only major contact lens retailer that lets me renew my prescription online so I can get my contacts fast. 1-800-CONTACTS has fast, free shipping and delivers the same contacts my doctor prescribes right to my door, all without ever leaving home.
Guys, I was in South Carolina recently, and I realized I was on my very last pair of contacts, and they were starting to bother me. And I knew I was going to have to switch to my glasses, and I wasn't going to have any contacts when I got home. So I was going to order some more contacts, and wouldn't you know it, my prescription had expired. That's where the express exam came in. I was able to take the exam, renew my prescription, and get my contacts right then. And when I got home, there they were waiting at the door. If you use contacts, 1-800-CONTACTS is for you. Getting contacts doesn't have to be a hassle. Let 1-800-CONTACTS get you the contact lenses you need right now. Order online at 1-800-CONTACTS.com or download the free 1-800-CONTACTS app today.
Every holiday shopper's got a list, but Ross shoppers, you've got a mission. Like a gift run that turns into a disco snow globe, throw pillows, and PJs for the whole family, dog included. At Ross, holiday magic isn't about spending more, it's about giving more for less. Ross, work your magic.
Hi, I'm Jessie Prey.
And I'm Andy Cassette. Welcome to Love Murder, where we unravel the darkest tales of romance turned deadly.
Our episodes are long-form, narrative-driven, and deeply researched. Perfect for the true crime aficionados seeking stories beyond the headlines.
Like the chilling case of Blanche Taylor Moore, the so-called Black Widow who left a trail of poisoned lovers.
Or the shocking murders of Chad Shelton and Dwayne Johnson, where family ties masked a sinister plot.
Subscribe to Love Murder on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors.
Today on The Prosecutors, we conclude our look at the Bryce Laspisa case. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, by my wandering co-host, Alice.
Wandering into, well, off a cliff, perhaps, actually,
perhaps.
In this instance.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes, guys, this case is, there's so many aspects of it that I don't think are typically talked about. So, though it may seem like we're wandering through the timeline, we are not at all. In fact, we are taking a look at this because it's been so long and really no break in the case.
Yeah, this is a weird one. As any of you who listened to last week's episode, I think, can attest. This is a very strange case with some really weird stuff, as we've been talking about. Just to catch you up, this is the Bryce Laspisa disappearance, and essentially Bryce had gone back to college. He was acting in a very strange way. He starts abusing some drugs. He's drinking a lot. He's not himself. He breaks up with his girlfriend by text. He gives a bunch of his stuff away. His girlfriend's calling his mom. His roommate's calling his mom. And he starts off on this drive, this just wandering drive towards where his parents lived. They're all in California, but he's making this drive sort of up that way. It should have taken 6 hours. We're now, I don't even know how long he's been driving.
14 hours in.
But it's a long time. At some point, he runs out of gas. A guy helps him out from a local store. Christian, he's like a real one. He's the hero of this story. And Bryce he's not doing anything you would expect him to do. And the last thing we talked about is Christian, who had supplied that gasoline to Bryce. It's been 3 hours, but he's like, basically Bryce's mom calls because she's trying to figure out where Bryce is. And he's like, I'll go back to where he was, but that was 3 hours ago. He shows up at this same location, and there is Bryce still sitting in his car, not moving. But at this point, he sort of said to his mom, it's about noon, and he said to his mom, okay, I'll start heading that way, and it's going to take him about 3 hours, or it should take him about 3 hours to get home. That's where we left you off last week.
Obviously, there's a ton of red flags throughout this entire timeline. The latest being that after getting gas, many of us, I've certainly run out of gas before. It's when I first started driving and didn't realize what the gas tank totally meant. So I have run out of gas in my life, and it's like a desperate situation, right? Like no matter how close to a gas station you are, it is a terrible feeling when you hear that sputter of the gas tank and you kind of drift off to the side of the road. And what do you typically do? You get gas as fast as you can, and then what do? You drive to the gas station, the nearest gas station, to fill your tank completely up, and then you go. That's not what happens here. Bryce literally sits there staring off into space, not moving, despite having enough gas in his tank to go get more gas and then continue on his journey. He sits there staring, and he tells his mom, all right, I'm on my way home. It'll be 3 hours. You can never judge how any person will act in any situation. For me, at this point, after my son's been staring into space, 12 hours after he had a very concerning interaction with his ex-girlfriend, who's the girlfriend calls the mom, being like, he shouldn't drive. 12 hours after that, and then 3 hours after he stared into space on the side of the road, not going anywhere, I would probably at the very least stay on the phone with him for the 3 hour drive, because 3 hours is not short. We're not talking 30 minutes. We're not talking 15 minutes. 3 hours, significant amount of time. But that's not what happens. Bryce hangs up with his mom. He says, I'm coming. And he starts presumably driving. And so Bryce's parents, the ever patient parents they are, they just sit there and wait. They don't drive towards him, maybe meet him halfway at an hour and a half mark. They sit there and wait for him to make it home 3 hours later. And this will be a shock to no one. 3 hours comes and goes. Bryce does not show up. 3.5 hours come and go. Maybe he stopped for gas. Maybe he went to the bathroom. Let's give him a little bit of lead time there. 3:30 comes. Bryce still isn't home. Now at this point, so 30 minutes after the time he should have arrived home, his parents, Karen and Mike, begin to call him. They both kind of take turns calling him, but he doesn't pick up. No one's able to get a hold of him. And they keep doing this. Now it's like, okay, he should have been here. He's not here.
Look, can you imagine how you would feel at this point? If I say at this point, I mean, it's so many points, I would be losing my mind. I mean, I would be freaking out. Honestly, the next thing they do is the thing that makes the most sense of anything they do, though even that they end up not following up on. But I would just be out of my mind with concern. It is an understatement to say there have been so many red flags in this case, because there have been so many red flags in this case. There are so many points in this case where in any other case, if that one thing happened, it would trigger a massive response. But in this case, just thing after thing after thing is happening, and there is no response.
So come about 6 o'clock, Bryce's parents at this point, they're like, okay, this is not just a situation where he's pulled off to the road or his phone has run out of battery. Something's really wrong. So they file a missing persons report at this point with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Now, law enforcement, they get to work immediately when they get this missing persons report, which doesn't always happen, as we know. But really, we're kind of more than 24 hours into whatever crisis Bryce is in. And so law enforcement reach out to AT&T to perform an emergency ping to Bryce's phone to get a location. We've talked about this on Legal Briefs before, but basically on an emergent situation, usually you need search warrants to get ping data, cell phone tower data on a phone. But when you have a situation of like a kidnapping or a missing person, you can get the phone company to ping their phone at that moment to try and locate where they are. So if it pings off, a tower in some town, they at least can triangulate within certain number of miles to where the person is. As opposed to right now, he could be anywhere. It's been 6-7 hours from the point in which he last saw him. Draw a circumference around that. That's a pretty big location to be looking. So Bryce's phone does ping, which means it's on and has batteries. It's pinging in Button Willow. So Those of you who may not know this geography very well, that means in about 6 or 7 hours, he's only moved 8 miles since Christian, the hero of the story, brought him gas. He did not get very far.
Okay, so the police have now located him. As Alice said, he's barely gone anywhere in this entire time. So the police go out to this location, only 8 miles away from the place that he sat after getting gas, and they find him in his car off of Highway 58. So the police show up, and Bryce is just sitting there in his car, just like he was when Christian saw him last time. And they start talking to him, and he, frankly, according to them, seems fine. He's lucid, he's friendly, he's talkative. They don't seem to have a problem. They're like, hey, let's do a field sobriety test because this whole thing is weird, and he passes it. This is interesting because remember, one of his issues he had before was the drugs and the drinking. So apparently, right now, he's either not taking drugs and drinking, or somehow he's able to pass this test anyways. He even consents to a search of his car because the cops are thinking this is strange. Something really weird is going on here. I don't know what it is, but they're doing all the things, right? They search the car. Nothing notable is found. And he tells the cops he just needed to blow off some steam before heading home. And that's why he's still sitting in Buttonwillow, where he's been now for like 12 hours at this point. And they're like, hey, man, you need to call your parents. Your parents are really worried about you. And interestingly, he is very reluctant to do so. So the deputies end up calling his mom. They get her on the phone, and they basically are like, talk to your mom. They hand him the phone, and they're like, talk to your mom. And he says...
Third person, by the way, in like the last 12 hours.
Yes.
24 hours at this point.
I mean, really, it's 4 if we have... Christian, the best friend and roommate, the former girlfriend, and now the police are like, talk to your mom. And he tells his mom, I was just going to grab something to eat and head home. I don't know what world we're living in that she would believe that. Remember, it is 9:30 p.m. at noon that day. 9.5 hours earlier, he told her he was going to start coming home. 9.5 hours earlier. Buttonwillow, I mean, maybe there's no restaurants in anywhere. I don't know exactly what it would mean that you were just going to get a bite to eat and you've been driving 8 miles in 9.5 hours. And she's like, but why are you still in Buttonwillow? And he's like, I was going to hang out with some friends later, which is completely inconsistent with what he just said, right? So Karen will say, and she does, she asks the deputies if they think he's okay to drive, and they say yes. That is not the issue. There is clearly something going on here that is a huge problem. And the things he's saying to her, he's been telling her stuff for the last 24 hours that aren't true, right? Like, remember, before this whole sojourn started, he called her at 1 o'clock in the morning after he left his girlfriend's house and made her think he was going back to his apartment, when in fact he wasn't going back to his apartment. Then he runs out of gas. Then we have the situation where he's just sitting there on the side of the road. And then he's like, I'm coming home. And then 9.5 hours later, oh, he's just going to get something to eat. He's going to hang out with some friends. He's obviously not telling her the truth. But for whatever reason, it does not motivate Karen to take a step that you might expect her to take. You know, whether it's to head to him, I don't know. I mean, I would almost be tempted to tell the deputies, look, I don't know what you're seeing, but this is California. My son is crazy. He's insane. Something horrible is going on. You need to put like a mental health hold on him or something, right? I mean, try and convince them to hold him. Like, she doesn't seem to do that. Much like the situation with his girlfriend, it's like, well, I guess he's okay. Let him go. And that's essentially what happens.
So he doesn't really go anywhere. And about an hour later at 10:30 p.m. So this is like, at this point, I mean, maybe Bryce is sleeping in his car. Probably not. He probably hasn't slept in a while here. But Christian, who's been working diligently, he's at least been working at this tire shop since 9 a.m., but maybe even before that. At 10:30, he returns a call to Karen from like an earlier call that she had left him. So he returns the call, and he again offers to go out to where Bryce was last seen by officers. Remember, only 8 miles further than where he'd been stopped for many hours before that. And he told Karen that he would go check on Bryce to make sure he was gone, that he'd gotten on his way, that he wasn't just sitting there. I don't know if it's surprising or unsurprising at this point. Christian drives out there for the third time that day while he's working a 15-hour shift, by the way. Bryce is still there. He is still there. In Buttonwillow, an hour after the police did a field sobriety test on him, asked him if he was okay, did a search of his car, called his mother on his phone, and put the phone to his ear and said, talk to your mother. He's still just sitting there. I don't care what field sobriety test you've passed. I'm not saying that he's not sober. I'm saying there is something much bigger going on, either in his head, emotionally, something. He has now been sitting in Buttonwillow for 11 hours. And Christian is the one who keeps going back and seeing them there. So 30 minutes later, Bryce finally pulls onto the highway. And Christian, the Good Samaritan, actually follows behind Bryce to make sure that Bryce isn't just gonna pretend to go and then pull off to the side of the road, because that seems to be what he's been doing for the last 11 hours. So Christian's really trying to make sure this guy's okay and going towards home. So he follows him for a little bit to make sure he's in the direction of home. Christian follows Bryce for roughly 10 miles before pulling off the highway, and he calls Karen to let her know that Bryce is on the way, and he had followed him for 10 miles and he seems to be going in that direction. Now, over the next few hours, Bryce and his parents talk several times over the phone. He's still, by the way, 3 hours from home, so he's now just taking off around 11 p.m. So even if he doesn't stop, this is driving through the night yet again when he was driving through the night before as well. So driving on zero sleep, been staring into space for about 11 hours at this point, and he is in communication with his parents as he drives.
Okay, but I want you to pay attention to the timing here, right? So it's 10:30 or so, 11 o'clock. Let's say it's 11 o'clock when Bryce finally pulls on the highway based on what Christian said. Though it's a little unclear whether he got there at 10:30 or that's the time that Bryce started leaving. I mean, the timing's a little off. But remember, he's about 3 hours away. We've been expecting him to get home 3 hours. That's how long it's going to take. So let's assume it was 11 o'clock, right? So he's driving, supposedly on his way to his parents. He's talking to his parents a couple times. At 12:30, Karen actually attempts to call him, and he does not answer. So she can't get him, right? Which would raise a lot of red flags and concerns once again for me, given everything else that's happened. At 1:50 a.m., he calls Karen back. Now, recall, 11 to 12, that's 1 hour. 12 to 1, that's 2 hours. 1 to 1:50, that's 2 hours and 50 minutes. If Bryce is actually heading in the direction of home, driving the normal speed, he's 10 minutes away, right? He should be somewhat close. It's 1:50 in the morning. He calls Karen back, and she's like, hey, don't know why you haven't been calling me, but where are you? And he says, it's too dark to see any signs. I don't even know what that means, right? He's presumably driving with headlights. Signs light up, but it's too dark to see any signs. And he tells them that according to his GPS, he'll be home around 3:25 a.m. That, for those of you who are not big into the math, is another hour and a half. What has he been doing? Once again, what is going on here? But apparently, once again, the only person who made any effort was Christian, who drove out to find him a couple times, right? Okay, so that's at 1:50. He's on his way. At 2:09, he calls Karen to let her know that he's just too tired to drive anymore, and he's going to pull over to sleep for a little while. At this point, he's been up for, 24 hours. But anyways, and his parents are like, yeah, That's a good idea. You should pull over and rest. Now, look, there is...
I would have maybe said that at 11 when he's still in Buttonwillow and maybe say like, why don't you get a hotel room?
Get a hotel. That's the other thing. They don't even say the thing that makes sense, which is get a hotel room. We will pay for you. Or, no, you are going to pull over at the very next gas station, rest stop, whatever, and we will come get you. Which is what they should have said 15 times before this. And I'm sorry, there is no defending this. There is no defending what his parents have done. And I don't feel great saying that because it feels a lot like victim blaming, and it feels a lot like second guessing some people who've lost their son, and that's a tragic thing. But I'm sorry. We're 24 hours into this adventure, and multiple times his parents have had opportunities to take decisive action for their son, and they just refuse to do it. And they continue to refuse even at this late moment. When he's suggesting doing something which is incredibly dangerous, pulling over and going to sleep, that is not good. Nothing that's happened here is good. But I just can't imagine. I cannot imagine being in this situation with my son and him suggesting something like that, and you could not keep me off the road. I'd be calling the cops again. I'd be like, look.
I was going to say, if for some reason you can't get in the car, you don't own a car, you can't pay for gas, your legs are broken, you can't drive, I'd be calling the police and be like, there is an emergency situation. You need to go find my son.
And look, this was their last chance. This was it. They had had so many opportunities to take some sort of action. They didn't do it. This was their last chance. And from here on out, it's just mystery and tragedy.
Guys, I have a little confession. I'm a last minute shopper. And if you're a last minute shopper like me, you know the feeling. It's horrible. The shelves are empty. Ideas are running low. I'm stressed out about what to buy my loved ones. Aura Frames is the solution with a gift that feels personal. I have lots of family members. I love them so much, but they are so difficult to shop for because they seem to have everything. But I love that I can turn to Aura Frames because I know the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, the cousins, they actually love this because I can personalize these frames for them. You get to upload unlimited photos and videos. You just download the Aura app and you connect to Wi-Fi. You get to preload photos before it ships, and you can keep adding photos from anywhere, anytime, so that these photo frames are kept up to date and your loved ones get to see pictures in real time.
Guys, why do we take all the photos we take? It's not so they will sit on our phone unviewed. It's because we want to capture a moment and we want to share it, but we don't print stuff out like we used to. We don't frame it like we used to. But that's where Aura comes in. And it's even better than a traditional frame because you can give it to someone you love. And then when you take those wonderful pictures of those wonderful life events of you and your family and your kids, it updates automatically, and your friends and family miles away can see what you're doing. I got one of these for my parents. They love it, and your family is going to love it too. For a limited time, you can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver Mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code Prosecutors at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code Prosecutors. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Guys, we're back with one of our favorite sponsors, Quince. When it comes to holiday gifting, I want to give people things they really love. Beautiful, timeless pieces they'll wear for years. And that's why I'm going with Quince. From Mongolian cashmere sweaters to Italian wool coats, everything is premium quality at a price that actually makes sense. Quince has something for everyone. Soft Mongolian cashmere sweaters for $50 that look and feel like designer pieces. Silk tops and skirts for dressing up. Perfectly cut denim for everyday wear and outerwear that actually keeps you warm. Their Italian wool coats are standout pieces, beautifully tailored, soft to the touch, and crafted to last for seasons. Every piece is made with premium material from ethical, trusted factories and priced far below what other luxury brands charge.
Guys, you know that I absolutely love Quince. And as this holiday season is coming up, I have my statement pieces and they're all from Quince. The cashmere feels incredible. It's soft, it's structured, and it doesn't pill. It's the kind of quality I'd normally expect from a $200 sweater, but it's only $50. And their Italian wool coat, they are so standout. They're a statement piece. I throw it over any sort of outfit I'm wearing this holiday, and people undoubtedly stop and ask me where I got it. Find gifts so good you'll want to keep them with Quince. Go to quince.com/prosecutors for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/prosecutors to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/prosecutors.
Parles-tu français? Hablas español? Parli italiano? If you've used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world. With lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers, Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Wondery. Spelled BABBEL.com/Wondery. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You can't solve every case for your kids, but with Greenlight, they'll have the instincts and the money skills to stay out of trouble. With a Greenlight debit card and money app, parents can monitor spending and teach financial responsibility. It's an easy way to guide kids as they grow, from earning allowance and tracking chores to learning how to save and even invest. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Wondery. That's greenlight.com/Wondery.
The wait is over. Dive into Audible's most anticipated collection, The Best of 2025, featuring top audiobooks, podcasts, and originals across all genres. Our editors have carefully curated this year's must-listens, from brilliant hidden gems to the buzziest new releases. Every title in this collection has earned its spot. This is your go-to for the absolute best in 2025 audio entertainment. Whether you love thrillers, romance, or nonfiction, your next favorite listen awaits. Discover why there's more to imagine when you listen at audible.com/bestoftheyear.
So I think at this point, this 24-hour saga so far, what we know definitively, other than Bryce's parents are allergic to driving, is Bryce doesn't tell the truth in terms of what's happening in the last 24 hours.
And he's so obviously been lying the whole time.
The whole time to everybody. And everyone around him recognizes, including a stranger who works at the tire shop. He knows he's lying. That's why he follows him for 10 miles. He doesn't follow him for 1 mile. 10 miles is kind of a long time, guys. He follows him for that long because this guy has been sitting there for 14 hours, not moving. Something is not right. So even a stranger who doesn't know him is like, he's not telling the truth. So is it surprising to anybody that at 2:09, despite telling his mother he's too tired to drive and he's going to pull over and rest, he does not in fact do that. So at 2:15, about 6 minutes after telling his parents that he's going to pull off, go to sleep, surveillance footage captures Bryce's car traveling up Lake Hughes Road in Castaic Lake. That's not that weird to me. Okay, maybe he wants a beautiful scenic route for his sleep. This next part is the weird part. At 4:29 a.m., so 2 hours and 14 minutes later, that same surveillance camera captures Bryce's car traveling up Lake Hughes Road again, in the same direction as before. So he's not going anywhere. He's like going in a circle. He's going the same way. He's not coming the opposite way. This is like a merry-go-round. Which makes sense, by the way, because He traveled 8 miles in 3 hours in Buttonwillow. He's clearly not going in a forward motion intentionally.
This whole thing is so sad because at this point, whatever's going on with Bryce, he is just lost. And I don't mean physically lost. He's just a lost individual. He's on the verge of collapse. He's sort of almost by rote, really heading in the direction of his parents' home. I mean, he's not actually trying to get there, and he's putting off something that he's thinking about doing. That's why he's sitting there on the side of the road. The things that are going through his head. And I'll say this. Some people have suggested that perhaps this is schizophrenia. This is about the age that schizophrenia will manifest itself. A lot of times people do self-medicate when schizophrenia first begins to sort of show itself. Number one, I'm not going to diagnose someone I've never met when I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. So maybe, right? But honestly, doesn't seem like that to me. He's not behaving irrationally. It's the stuff he's doing is unusual, but he's not, when he's with the police, for instance, he's not giving any evidence to them that he's in some sort of strange mental state, that he's hallucinating, that he's paranoid. I mean, he's not doing any of those things, right? In many ways, it feels like what he's actually doing is he is struggling with something massive. We don't know what it is. And he's just lost. And so you see this circumstance where, as Alice said, he's kind of driving in circles. And he is reaching sort of the moment of crisis, but it is taking him a while to get there. And just the cries for help throughout this, even if they were subconscious, even if they were unintentional, there are so many of them. And they just never got answered. They were just ignored up until this point.
So that was 4:29 that he's seen driving a second time. Remember, now we are well into like day 2 of not sleeping. I'm sure he is in fact tired. At 5:30 a.m., Bryce's 2003 Toyota Highlander was found abandoned off an access road to the state recreation area in Castaic Lake, California. Now, his car had been crashed and was found on its side at the bottom of a 25-foot embankment, so a cliff. It was adjacent to the lake's main boat access road. The back window had been broken from the inside, which is likely how Bryce was able to get out of the vehicle. Actually, incredible that despite falling down a 25-foot cliff and crashing onto its side, Bryce was able to escape because he was not found in the vehicle. Now, his laptop and phone were still inside the car, and his duffel bag and wallet were also located just outside the vehicle by the rear window. In other words, wherever he is, his wallet is not with him. His phone is not with him. His laptop is not with him. His duffel bag with all his things in it, he has nothing with him. There is a small spot of Bryce's blood found on the passenger side headrest and another small spot found in the back seat. There were no signs that anyone was seriously injured and absolutely no sign of Bryce other than that little spot of blood.
Okay, so you have this discovery, and that happens at 5:30 a.m. At 8 a.m., the Laspisas are woken up by the doorbell. And I wouldn't be asleep. Maybe now I'm just being overly critical, but if this had been going on that long, I would be on the road. But best case, I'm sitting by the door, waiting, calling him every 30 minutes. Hey, how's it going? You still, you wake yet? Yeah. I wouldn't just go to sleep and be like, well, he's resting. I'm sure he'll be here eventually. Got to get my beauty rest, right? And then at 8 a.m. still be asleep, but whatever. So the Laspisas are woken up. They think, hey, Bryce is home. But when they get to the door, it's the California Highway Patrol. And they ask if they own a beige 2003 Toyota Highlander. And they say they do. It was the car that their son drove. And that's when the officers inform them that the car has been found wrecked and abandoned, but there is no sign of Bryce, which I'm sure came as a shock, but shouldn't have, because we've been leading to this almost inexorably this entire time. Okay. So obviously People are looking for Bryce immediately. And remember, we catch him on camera at 4:30. His car is found at 5:30. That's only an hour. They're already looking for him at that point, right? Based on what they're seeing, they are able to determine that Bryce had accelerated intentionally when he was driving towards the cliff. He goes past the cell phone tower and through some brush. And apparently the angle of this cliff makes it look like the water is just below you. Like if you go off the cliff, you're going to go into the water. But that is an optical illusion. The water's not actually there. So what you actually end up doing is you go off the cliff like Bryce did and you crash your car. And this has led many people to believe, I think correctly, that Bryce was attempting to drive into the lake, most likely to end his life. So following that line of thinking, the detectives were like, well, maybe he kept going. You know, maybe he got out the back and he's going to finish what he started and he went down into the lake or towards the lake. They're combing the area by foot. They're on ATVs. They have helicopters. They search all weekend. They have dogs out looking for him. They have cadaver dogs looking for him. They're searching the hills. They're searching the shoreline. They have police divers on the lake looking for him, but no sign of Bryce is recovered.
So 5 days after this, on September 4th, 2013, a jogger is running around Castaic Lake and they report a brush fire just 3 miles from the scene of where Bryce's car was found. A person had been set on fire. I know what you all must be thinking. Oh my goodness, this is Bryce. He hasn't been found so far. Why is he on fire? What is happening? But despite everyone getting their hopes up that maybe Bryce was finally found, this was not Bryce. This was a man from LA who was the victim of a homicide, and in fact, it had nothing to do with Bryce's disappearance. But you can see how people are latching onto these things because how does someone drive off a cliff and just disappear?
It's funny because we've just gotten to the mystery, right? Like, this is the mystery. What happened to him? And to me, I'm just so blown away by everything that's happened up to this point that this part is almost like an afterthought.
This part isn't a mystery to me. Unfortunately, I think I know exactly what he did. I think he was a man in crisis, and it was like 36 hours of pure cries for help that went unanswered. By the way, those of you who are like, well, he's an adult, whatever. He was 19.
Yeah. Come on.
I mean, okay, legally he can vote,
I don't care
but we're not
50.
talking about like a 59-year-old man who's been on his own. He's been away from home for 1 year. This is the very beginning of his second year of college. And by the way, I don't know if any of you have ever been in these types of situations, but if you recognize someone in crisis around you, it doesn't really matter what their age is. It doesn't even matter if they're related to you. I was very recently in a situation where, kind of similar to this, the girlfriend of someone who was in massive crisis called. Don't even know them that well. They were just like, we feel like you are someone who knows how to deal with the situation. Clearly, there was a crisis going on in the background. This was a grown man, many years older than Bryce was. And it was clear to someone, me, who didn't even know this person that well, that something was not right. And I'm not talking like they were hot. They probably would have passed this field sobriety test. But something was not right in the sense that it was headed towards disaster unless someone tried to do something. That's why the person they were with was desperately trying to call for help. So your age certainly matters when you're talking about like, well, you got yourself into this credit card mess, you're going to have to pay it off yourself, is very different from 36 hours into crisis mode when the words coming out of your mouth, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, are not matching your actions, sitting still for 14 hours despite saying that you're okay. People who know you the best, your best friend and roommate, your ex-girlfriend who you were, very, very close with, both recognizing that something was deeply wrong in terms of danger to yourself and were calling out for help. Those situations, like, age doesn't really matter. When people around you who can recognize that there is like help needed, otherwise devastation will occur, this is where community matters. There's no law that enforces that like you have to step in and do something. But as fellow human beings who recognize dignity in someone else, when you see someone in crisis, you call 911. You do. That's why there's like the 911 exists. When I see a car crash, I call 911. I don't know who just crashed. Probably a lot of other people have called 911. But this is the human dignity being recognized in other people. When you see someone in crisis, you do something. But I do want to note that he is 19. So we are not talking about like a middle-aged man. He's barely making his way in the world at this point.
What you're saying is so important. This is not, he decided to join the circus, or he decided to drop out of college, or he decided to sell all his stuff and go to Vegas and bet it all on red. That's a situation where I say, well, he's an adult. I mean, he can do that if that's what he wants to do, right? No, this is very different. And I think you're right. It just doesn't matter how old he is. And I think the fact that Christian, the dude at the tire store, recognized this. I mean, it wasn't just even the best friend and the girlfriend. Christian saw this and tried to help. Tried to just, and he is great. I mean, I can't praise Christian enough. You want everybody to be like him, right? You want everybody when they see this kind of stuff to act this way. And I'll
He's
give you
the opposite
an example.
of a bystander effect.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
yeah.
He is the bystander who does something.
And back when I was writing books, I mean, it's kind of like the podcast. You know, you make friends with people who read the books, and you sort of talk to them. And there was one guy who he was a fan, and he would write me every now and then. And one time he just sent me an email that was weird. And there was just something about it. I'd read a bunch of his emails, but there was something about this email that I didn't like. And I knew sort of generally where he lived. So I figured out where he lived, and I figured out what his address was. It was like I was in a hotel in Cleveland. It was midnight when I got this email. He was out in Oregon. Called the police department in Oregon, and I was like, I know this is going to be strange, but I didn't really know this guy, but I got this email and it seemed weird. And I was just wondering if you guys would go out there and check on him. And they did. They went out there, and it turned out he was kind of having a mental health crisis, but they were able to talk him down. And they called me back, and they're like, hey, he's fine. He's going to go to, a facility for tonight, and thanks for calling, all this other stuff. And I was so glad that I called, right? Because there was just something about it that was just a little off. The signals that Bryce is sending are just so obvious. And we're going to talk about what may or may not have happened to him. But the mystery of this case to me is why you could send so many signals and not get a response.
And I recognize that sometimes when someone has their mind set on something, by the way, this does not appear to be Bryce. He does not appear to be someone who is, I'm going to drive 10 times as long as it takes to drive off a 25-foot cliff. Seems like he quite literally was pushed to that point. It seems like that was not what he set out to do 30 hours earlier. He was not like leaving his girlfriends and he was like, I know what lake I'm going to go to. I'm going to go off this embankment. I think there are situations where people make up their minds and they're going to do something. And it may be true that there's nothing you can do to change it. You also don't know the effect in which you showing an ounce of care may change something. That someone does call on your behalf, or someone sends a text and just says, hey, haven't heard from you in a few days, despite me. Our group text, I've been texting everyone. Everyone's responded but you. Are you doing okay? You never know what that effect may have. We don't know what that effect may have had here either. And look, lots of people were reaching out to him. His ex-girlfriend, his roommate and best friend, Christian, the sheriff's deputy. So there may be a situation where none of this would have changed in outcome. But I think that is a very fatalistic view, and also what a difficult way to live, to think I will do nothing because my actions will have no effect on whatever tragedy may happen. We never know. So, still haven't found Bryce. 9 days after he goes missing, September 8th, 2013, the investigators bring in bloodhounds to try and track down Bryce's scent. They bring in 2 separate bloodhounds who did catch on to Bryce's scent, and both dogs traced this scent trail through the recreational area of this lake and to a nearby truck stop where the trail just ended. Many have interpreted this to mean that Bryce got to the truck stop and got into a car and is gone.
We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to theories. So at this point, though, the trail really has gone cold. In August of 2015, the family, I guess, hires some sonar specialists to search Castaic Lake for Bryce. And you guys know this is the side sonar. Basically, you drive around the boat. And it's very effective. They attempted to use this in the Lacey Peterson case, as a matter of fact, but they don't find any sign of Bryce. In 2017, a human skull is found along the Templin Highway nearby to where Bryce's car was located, but once again, it was determined not to belong to Bryce. And look, we got somebody getting lit on fire and we have a skull being found. I mean, it's a dangerous world, right? And we talk about this sometimes. It seems like whenever there's a search for a missing person, they always find 5 or 6 bodies, and there's a little bit of that going on here as well. And that's basically the end of the timeline. There have really been no development since then. You have sort of the standard things that you see. People are looking for Bryce and they see somebody and think, oh, that's him. And it turns out not to be him. There was one person who I think an investigator said basically it could have been Bryce's doppelganger. I mean, he looked just like him, but it wasn't him. He used to have these sightings, but really, as far as any kind of concrete evidence that Bryce is still with us, or really any indication of what happened to him, there's been nothing in the last 12 years. So that's the end of the timeline. Before we go on to theories, I do want to talk about this Vyvanse a little bit. Sort of the role it had in his disappearance, the extent to which he was abusing it. It has been disputed by different sources, and there have been some people who have suggested that Bryce actually had struggled with a substance abuse issue in high school. Now, whether that's true or not, we don't know. As always cases, there are always people who claim to know things, but then there's no way to verify that. There's been discussion about how Vyvanse can result in a psychotic break if you're abusing it. And actually, several people have written in to talk about that if you're really abusing Vyvanse in the way that Bryce was, you could really have some sort of mental breakdown. And the fact of the matter is, it seems like Bryce was not only abusing Vyvanse, but he hadn't slept in over a day. And with everything that's going on with him, I don't know. I would believe pretty much anything could have happened. And I don't know. I mean, the other thing is some people say this isn't a big deal. This is the kind of thing that lots of kids do in college. You say he's abusing it, but really he's just taking a few. For me, given the fact that all of this strangeness happened and he disappeared, it's difficult for me just to sort of hand wave away really anything he's doing. And that includes taking Vyvanse.
Right. And the Vyvanse is in conjunction with all the things happening. You're right. Someone who is recreationally taking it for fun, doesn't have a proclivity to, I don't know, whether emotionally, mentally, to being affected by the Vyvanse in ways that are unexpected, maybe they're fine taking it. But it doesn't change the fact that there were other situations happening. There were other things happening in Bryce's life that led to whatever was happening. The alcohol abuse, the Vyvanse abuse, and the giving away his things. And there's a nucleus of facts that we don't understand that is at root of all this. And the Vyvanse, I think, is certainly an important factor to consider one of these. And the fact that there are kids out there who use it recreationally and they're fine does not necessarily affect what Vyvanse had to do in this case because of whatever was happening in Bryce's mind or in his life at this time. So, theories. Let's get there. There are a million theories in this case. The chat's going wild with theories of what has happened. And most of all, these theories really hinge on 2 main things. Number 1, did Bryce drive off that embankment by accident or on purpose? And 2, is Bryce still alive today? So, the first theory that we've already mentioned and probably is number 1 for a lot of people thinking, well, this is obviously what happened, is suicide. So one of the most prevalent theories is that Bryce wanted to end his life, and he did in fact end his life. There were reports that Bryce was acting erratically leading up to his disappearance. According to these reports, he was drinking heavily, he was taking Vyvanse, and he was giving away his most prized possessions. This all explains why he would drive in the direction of the cell phone tower embankment twice before actually driving his car off of it. Maybe he had to work up the nerve in order to drive off that cliff. That's why the strange kind of going in the same direction. Like he tries to do it, can't quite do it, so comes back around, takes an hour breather, paces around, tries to get up the courage to do it again, and then succeeds that second time. This could also account for why he spent so much time in Buttonwillow. Not close to his home, not his real home, his home that his parents moved to, or his college, or where his girlfriend lived. Buttonwillow, he probably doesn't have friends there. Buttonwillow's kind of nowhere with respect to him. It does not mean anything to him except that he ran out of gas there. So maybe he was sitting in Buttonwillow, calmly, staring straight ahead for 14 hours because he was trying to make a plan and get up the nerve to end his life. If he thought that water below the embankment was actually closer than it really was due to the position of the cliff, he may have intended to drive straight into that lake, let the car consume water, sink down, and end his life that way. But there was evidence and of course we know that water was not there, so in fact the car crashed and Bryce was okay enough to not be in that car. So he wasn't knocked out. He could move. In fact, he did move. He broke his way out of the car. So there is evidence, of course, that suggests Bryce left his vehicle after the crash. His body was never found in the immediate area or in the lake. And the fact that these bloodhounds tracked his scent to a rest stop seems to suggest that Bryce made it to that rest stop and got in a car. This, of course, kind of cuts against that suicide theory because let's say he thought that was the lake, he was going to end his life, he drives off, he hits it, bang, and he's like, gosh darn it, I'm still here. Well, let's go end it now. Break the window, climb out, leave all your things behind because who needs it when you're about to end your life? Walk towards that lake, jump on in. But that's not what he does. He kind of does something that cuts against that theory of him wanting to end his life. He goes to find a way out, but he doesn't take anything with him.
In some ways, suicide is the most obvious theory since it seems patently obvious he attempted suicide. But, as you said, you have this bloodhound information that I don't know about. And I'll say this. I don't think it is possible to walk into a lake to drown yourself and the police not find him. I just think they would have found him. I realize that sometimes bodies disappear in lakes. I don't know anything about this lake. Maybe this is a lake that's famous for bodies sort of disappearing. There's one near where I grew up, which is it's a power company lake, and it's got a lot of trees in the bottom that were never cut down when they filled it up. And so every time we have a drought, they'll find 50-year-old bodies that people drowned, their bodies went down, they got caught in the trees, and they never came up. And so then when the trees start sticking out, there are the bodies. Right? Maybe that's this kind of lake. I don't know. But given that they started looking for him about an hour later, it just seems like they would have found him. It seems like they would have found some evidence of him. And I will say this, it's one thing to drive your car into a lake. It's another thing just to walk into a lake. I'm not saying he couldn't have done that, but I don't know. I don't know about that. Now, what we can't know is let's say that he did walk off to the truck stop. And let's say he got a ride somewhere. He very well could have ended his life somewhere else. And either because of the way he did it, his body was never found, or possibly because he got rid of all identifying information, there's a John Doe somewhere that we don't realize is Bryce. And maybe one day Othram will do a DNA test on an unknown body, and boom, this mystery will at least be partially solved. That's a possibility. But even though I think suicide was his initial intention, I don't know if that's what ended up happening or not. And that leads to the second theory, which, as we've said in every disappearance, is always a theory. But frankly, of all the cases we've ever done, this is the one where maybe. And that's that he ran away to start a new life. And this is something that people have speculated about, that he got into a car at that truck stop and left to start a new life. This would explain why his body was never found. It would explain why he was lingering in Buttonwillow, much like the suicide theory. Maybe he was just trying to decide what to do. Now, look, I think, though, he did not drive up to that lake thinking, I'm going to start a new life. He drove up to that lake thinking, I'm going to kill myself. But after he drives off the embankment and doesn't die, it is a very common thing, well documented, that people who attempt suicide often have immediate regrets. This is most famously seen in the people who've jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. Many of them have said that literally the moment after they jumped off the bridge, they regretted it. And many of them who survived, it completely changed their lives. because they had this sort of brush with death, and then their lives were completely different, and they had a different view on everything. And some people think maybe that's exactly what happened. He drove off that embankment. He survived. He breaks out the back. And then what does he do? He leaves all his stuff there, all his connections to his old life, the things that were used to track him, right? How'd they found him once? They pinged his cell phone. How did they find him the other time? They looked at his credit cards. What do we find sitting next to the car? All of that stuff, right? All of the things that tied him to his life are now gone. And there you go. Now he goes off to start his own life. Now I will say this. It is incredibly difficult to do something like that in the modern world, number one. Number two, he would have had almost no resources. If he had sold his Xbox and sold his diamond earrings, I would be like, you know what? Maybe he was getting some cash, right? But he literally would have had to have walked to that rest stop, right? Got in a car and basically gone somewhere and just completely reinvented himself without a social security number, without a false ID, without anything. Given the state that he was in at this moment, do we really think he could have pulled that off? Do we really think that he was in the mental place to be able to do that and avoid ever being found? I don't know. That seems hard to believe, but you know, it is a possibility. And what could drive all this? What could drive a suicide? What could drive starting your life? Remember, one of the things that his mom tells us that he said to her was he had something that he wanted to tell her. There was something he wanted to talk about with her. And that thing, whatever it is, seems to be what started all of this to sort of spiral down this path. And I'll say this, the other problem with him doing this is he does not blend in, right? If you've seen a picture of him, I mean, he's a big redheaded dude, right? He has a large tattoo of a bull on his arm. He's the kind of guy you'd probably see. So unless he went down to the Baja Peninsula or something, it's just difficult to believe that he is actually alive and well somewhere, though there are people who worked this case who think that's exactly what happened. And I don't know. As I've said, I almost never believe that is a real possibility. In this case, it might actually be one. So you have heard us talk about Lola blankets before and how much we love them. And it is absolutely true. It doesn't matter what your wind down ritual is. It doesn't matter. Do you like curling up in front of a fire? Do you want to be outside? Do you just want a really warm blanket for your bed? Well, Lola has it. I am obsessed with Lola blankets. So much so that when I was deciding what I was going to get my mom for Christmas, I went straight to Lola. And I tell you what, it's going to be my most successful Christmas ever because Lola blankets are the most comfortable, the warmest, the softest, the most cozy blanket you can imagine. This is a blanket you have to try.
Lola is the world's #1 blanket. It's crafted with ultra soft, luxury vegan faux fur and a signature 4-way stretch that sets it apart. Here's the awesome part. It's machine washable, double hem for durability, and stays flawless. No pilling, no shedding, even after repeated washes. It stays completely beautiful, even with all my 4 kids jumping on it and fighting over it because they love it. Lola is also my go-to gift because it's personal, beautiful, and something people actually will use every day. And this time of year, when you're decorating and pulling your home together, a Lola isn't just a blanket. It's the missing piece that makes your space feel complete, warm, and inviting. Lola has over 10,000 5-star reviews, and once you feel it, you'll know why. There's a reason it's called the world's #1 blanket. This thing is next level. Give the gift of softness this holiday season with Lola blankets. For a limited time, our listeners are getting a huge 40% off their entire order at lolablankets.com by using code prosecutors at checkout. Just head to lolablankets.com and use code prosecutors for 40% off. After you purchase, they will ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you.
The holidays are here, and that means it's the most wonderful time of the year to save with Rakuten. Use Rakuten to stack cash back at your favorite stores on top of holiday sales. That's savings on savings. With Rakuten, you get cash back on gifts for everyone on your list. From toys for the kids, to kitchen gear for the person who loves to cook, to electronics for everyone. You can even save on something for yourself. Just shop the stores you love and cash back is automatically added to your account. And you can get paid with gift cards, PayPal, or check. Or eligible American Express card members can even choose to earn membership rewards points instead of cash back. It's truly a no-brainer. Join for free today and get a new member bonus after minimum qualifying purchases. Just go to Rakuten.com, download the app, or install the browser extension. That's RAKUTEN. Terms and conditions apply.
Hi, it's Sarah. I'm the founder of Olive and June, and can I tell you the one thing that always makes my day better? A fresh manicure. But who has the time or the money to go to the salon every week? That's why we created the Olive and June Gel Mani System. It gives you that same mani that you get at a salon for so much less. It comes with everything you need, a pro-level lamp, salon-grade tools, our damage-free gel polish that lasts up to 21 days. All you do is prep, paint, cure, and you're good to go. And the best part, it's super easy and so affordable. Each mani breaks down to $2. So let's skip that $80 salon appointment and get the salon quality look at home for so much less and on your schedule. Head to oliveandjune.com/ManiMagic20 and use code ManiMagic20 for 20% off your first gel system. That's oliveandjune.com/ManiMagic20, code ManiMagic20 for 20% off your first gel mani system.
The fact that there's no contrary evidence, right? He clearly was alive in the car and he got his way out of it and there's no sign of him. So it's kind of like until you prove that there's some sign that he's dead, then a working theory has to be that he is alive somewhere. But I agree with you. I mean, I certainly don't think his original intent 30 hours earlier when he started driving to his ex-girlfriend's place to talk to her was that he was going to run off for a new life, because he wasted a lot of time. Usually you would just go, right? Like he's talking to the police, he's talking to Christian, he's talking to all these people who can track him and know where he is. If he really wanted to disappear, he could have just driven off right after he left his girlfriend's apartment. So I don't think, if this is what he did, it was the original intent. Third theory. Bryce was met with foul play. So some people believe that Bryce drove his car off this embankment by accident because he's exhausted, hasn't slept for more than a day. It's dark. It's 4:30 in the morning in kind of wilderness. And that he accidentally drives off this cliff. And when he got out of the car at the bottom of this cliff and attempted to get help at the truck station, that's where he was met with the wrong person. He may have even been knocked out a little bit, not thinking in his right mind. Not thinking in his right mind because he hasn't slept in more than a day. And he's just kind of asking for help, and he's a vulnerable person, and someone takes advantage of his vulnerability. So that could happen in that it's a theory that exists in the world, but there's literally no evidence that a crime occurred, and Bryce's remains have never been located anywhere. There's no surveillance camera of someone being pulled into a truck or a car. There's no indication that he called for help or anything happened. I think it's always possible someone is met with foul play, but we have no evidence to point us to that theory. So Bryce's parents think that he was either met with foul play or that he is alive and doesn't know who he is. So it's not that he intentionally ran off to start a new life, but that he's alive somewhere and he hit his head so hard that he just doesn't know that he's Bryce Laspisa.
Look, he wasn't murdered. If he was murdered, it was by someone who didn't know him, wanted to rob him, something like that. They wouldn't have bothered to hide the body. They found 2 bodies while they were looking for him. That's not what happened. They would have found him if he'd been murdered. So that's not what happened. Now, the head injury thing, there are people who believe that if you look at the accident, he probably did suffer a head injury based on, number one, the way the accident happened, and number 2, where you see the blood. And maybe he's out there and he doesn't remember any part of his life. If that's true, though, once again, surely someone would have recognized him, because then he wouldn't even be making any effort to hide himself. He would have shown up in a hospital somewhere, or he would just be somewhere and he would be found. So if he's still alive, I don't think he's out there sort of living a life not knowing who he is. I think if he's alive, he chose to disappear for whatever reason. And that brings us to the last thing we want to talk about, which was the first thing we said, which was that there's a lie in this story. And the question for all of you is, how much does this lie matter, if at all? It may be completely irrelevant. And I say it's a lie. I'm going to caveat that later on. And you'll see that, because it's impossible to say whether or not what I'm going to tell you is actually true. But what is the lie? Well, the lie is that Bryce is not an only child, because Mike is not his father. So despite the fact that it is repeatedly reported in basically every coverage of the story that Bryce was the only child of Mike and Karen, that does not appear to be true. There are two sort of ways this story is told. The first has almost no support other than a anonymous Reddit person, though it has been ran with, and that's that Bryce actually had an older sister who lived with her father until her father died. She then came to live with the Laspisas. Then there was some sort of falling out, and she became estranged with her parents and now no longer talks to them. I can find no proof of that. I don't know if that's true. However, putting that aside, the other thing, though, is I did reach out to someone who claims to be Bryce's younger brother. And the story he tells is different from that one. It's that Bryce was born in Chicago to Karen and a man named Richard Birmingham. And that very shortly thereafter, that relationship ended. Mike came into the family very quickly after that and was the only father that Bryce ever knew. This person who claims to be Richard Birmingham's son was able to provide a lot of information, including the fact that Birmingham died in New Jersey in 2016, which I was able to confirm. I was also able to identify an address in Illinois that is tied to three people: Richard Birmingham, Karen Laspisa, and Bryce Laspisa. All three of them, if you do record searches on that property, all three names come up. They're all tied together, which I think is a pretty good indication that what this person is saying is true. Also, I was able to tie this person to Richard Birmingham. So it appears that he is indeed Richard Birmingham's son. He also provided a photograph of Richard Birmingham, and he is the spitting image of Bryce. If this person is lying and making all this up, I don't know why they'd be doing that, but they've done a really good job of sort of papering this story. Impossible to confirm because Bryce is a ghost. If you try and find any information about him through sort of Ancestry.com, record searches, all that stuff, basically nothing shows up. No birth certificates. I don't think he's ever been declared dead, but there's just nothing out there. So it's hard to really prove that. It was interesting to me that address is tied to him. And he also does have an older sister, by the way, an older half-sister. She is Richard's daughter by another woman. So that whole story about her moving in with the Laspisas would make no sense. So I think the first story is false, but I think this story is almost certainly true. And the thing I'll say, assuming this person is telling the truth, is one thing that they wanted me to say was, if by some chance Bryce is still alive out there, there are people who love him, even though they've never met him, and would like to be part of his life. So this is one of the things I'm throwing out there. Now, how important is this? I don't know. I don't know if it's important at all. I don't know if it tells us anything about what was going on with Bryce. I don't know if he knew about this. I don't know if he just found out about this. I have no idea. But it's interesting to me that, assuming this story is true, which there's a possibility, like I said, this person's just a total fraudster. But assuming the story is true, it is interesting to me that part of Bryce's history is completely whitewashed. It's just not part of this discussion. Maybe because it doesn't have anything to do with his disappearance, but nevertheless, I find it interesting that we've been told for so long that he is the only child of this family, and that at least is not 100% true.
Now we're just creating that part researched. But it may not be that the lie is perpetrated for any reason but the fact that maybe Bryce thought he was an only child, right? I have no idea. But it is kind of weird. Like, why would you... Lie is maybe too strong of a word or with too many negative connotations when you don't know the intent behind the person who has said it. But to say something that is not true repeatedly and not correct it over time, it is interesting unless it's the family history, lore, what have you, say. So there might be more to this than we can even understand.
And I'll say this, from conversations with this person, it sounds like the end of the relationship with Karen and Richard, it wasn't great. I mean, Richard gave up all his rights, completely out of Bryce's life, moved to New Jersey, spent the rest of his life in New Jersey until he died in 2016. It may just be kind of like, we talked about this in the West Memphis 3 case and like John Mark Byers. I mean, it may just be like Mike was just always in his life. He was in his life from the very beginning. He was the only father he ever knew. And so why even worry about that messiness? We'll just tell the story the way we've always told the story. But given everything else in the case, and given the weirdness, and frankly, given what I think is some strange behavior by the parents, I think it's something worth considering. And it is hard for me not to sort of wonder if Bryce might have learned some things about his family history and himself that summer. You know, I mean, you think about like, what was the trigger for all this change? Like, why was it that he went back to college and this completely different person? I mean, maybe this was something he discovered. Complete speculation. You know, we'll never know that unless it's true and someone wants to tell us that. But I don't know, just another little wrinkle in what is a very strange case. Well, look, it is not too late to solve this case. We can always hope that Bryce will be found either alive or, if unfortunately he is deceased. If you're out there, just something to remember. He's a big old white guy with red hair and green eyes and a tattoo of a Taurus bull and his birthday in Roman numerals on his upper left arm. He has pierced ears. And if he were alive today, he would be 30 years old. So if you know somebody like that, I don't know, maybe find out whether they want everyone else to know or not. But if you have any information, you can always contact the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office at 323-890-5500. Okay, well, Alice, do you want to answer a question?
Let's answer a question. I was going to say, what's the takeaway, man? I guess it's like...
Look, I'll say this. We're always trying to have a positive takeaway with all these cases, and sometimes it's hard to find one. I actually don't think it's hard to find one at all in this case, and Alice has already said it, and that's be Christian. In a world of not Christians, be Christian. Like, if you see somebody... Reach out to people
in crisis, man.
Yeah, if you see somebody in crisis, if you see somebody that everything's going wrong, don't just look the other way. Do what you can.
I'll give an additional example where it could have been really easy to just look away. Like, Brett's example was so good, where Spidey senses went up, and if that guy was totally fine, Brett may have come off looking pretty creepy, right? But he was like, you know what? I'm going to do what I think is right. I was on Facebook... This was like a few years ago, and someone I haven't talked to in like 15 years, but we used to be friends, childhood friends. A lot of us are friends together. Started posting really crazy posts. Classic. Something was wrong mentally. The way the words were strung together, very hallucinatory. And this person was not normally like this, but it was like 20 posts a day, and they were clearly something was wrong with this person. I haven't spoken to this person in 15 years, and it popped up immediately because he was posting so often. It popped up on my feed, even though I never engaged with him on Facebook. His post was at the top of my feed every time I opened up Facebook, and I saw it for the third day in a row, and I was like, clearly something is wrong. I don't know him. I don't know how else to reach out to him, and so we had all gone to high school together, and I reached out to every person I was still in contact with from high school, which is not that many people, but I was just like, hey, have you seen this person's post? Something's wrong, right? Like, this is clear. And as soon as I said that, basically everyone was like, yeah, I've been seeing these posts. Something is clearly wrong. And through basically like telephone, we figured out who this person was still in contact with at least in more recent history from our high school class. And we were able to narrow it down, and it had turned out where his parents had actually moved out of the country and was not around, and so did not know that this was happening. And we were able to get people who had been in contact with him more recently in the last couple of months show up to where he was living. And in fact, this person was in crisis, and he ended up getting institutional help, made a recovery, is okay. But that's what it may look like. Maybe nothing would have happened, or maybe our actions would not have changed the outcome. But I think in this instance, it did. So it's along the lines of see something, say something, but more so than even say something, do something if you can, because we should not live disjointed from each other. We were meant to be in community. And this is what, 2013? I think we've become much more disjointed as a society even since 2013. And the only way to fix it is to be more Christian, to be the person who smiles and says hello to people around you and know your neighbor's name, and to recognize when something may be wrong and then do something about it.
And look, we've been really hard on the parents, and I can't imagine what it's like to lose your son. And I'm sure it was a terrible thing. And I'm sure they feel guilty about what they could or should or do. They probably ran this through their head 1,000 times. And let me just say this, just giving them the absolute benefit of the doubt, I think it is probably understandable that initially they weren't going to helicopter in, right? I mean, their son is trying to become an adult. He's trying to sort of live his own life. But I think at some point you have to trust your gut. Like at some point you have to stop telling that voice inside of you that says something wrong. No, it'll be fine. This is kind of like a corollary to that whole gift of fear thing, right? We've talked about before, where you should listen to that sort of intuition because it's there for a reason. This wasn't that, but I'm sure there had to have been multiple times over the course of that 24 hours that they said to themselves, something is horribly wrong when they filed the police report. But they never allowed themselves to take that next step. And maybe it was because they thought, man, if we drive out there, he's going to be so mad at us. He'll never talk to us again, you know. Or they just wanted to believe him when he said, oh, no, I've just been looking for a McDonald's for 8 hours, right? They just wanted to believe so badly that everything was fine that they didn't take any actions. And trust your gut. Trust it. Because if you call the cops and the person's fine, maybe you're embarrassed, maybe they're angry, but everybody's still alive, right? And I don't know. I know that it can be hard to do, but especially when you just keep seeing the red flags, you've got to act. Because if you don't, that's what you're going to regret. And I truly believe that is right. Okay. I've got some like funny questions. Let's do some funny questions because that was deep.
I like
right.
Funny questions.
And
Please
this
submit
one's
some
funny.
more funny questions, guys.
Because I don't know. I find the idea of this disgusting, so I'm just going to ask you anyways. This is from CMP. CMP wants to know, what do you put on a meatloaf sandwich? Ketchup or mayonnaise? What about you, Alice? When you slice off a big chunk of meatloaf and put it between two slices of white bread, what else do you have on it?
First of all, maybe it's a cultural thing. I didn't know that was a thing.
I've never had a meatloaf sandwich in my life.
I didn't know it was a thing. I'm not.
This has to be a northern thing, right?
Maybe
like,
I've just never heard of that. I've had a hamburger before, but not a meatloaf sandwich.
I mean, I've had meatloaf. I've had
meatloaf,
right?
and I've had sandwiches, but not a meatloaf sandwich. I've had meatball sandwiches. So I don't know what you would put on a meatball sandwich, but the idea of putting mayonnaise on meatloaf at all makes me a little bit, a little queasy. So I guess if I had to choose between the two, it would be ketchup.
So I do like ketchup with meatloaf. So I
It's like
guess
a hamburger. I get that.
if I had to eat a meatloaf sandwich, I would go with ketchup. But I got to say, I can think of like one time in the last 15 years when I had a craving for meatloaf and got some. I can literally remember the day.
Who makes meatloaf that you crave? I'm just curious.
I don't crave any particular person's meatloaf. I was just having a craving for meatloaf, and so I went to a restaurant that had meatloaf, and I got some meatloaf, some ketchup, and I ate it. But it's like not typically what I'm going
I think
for.
I've had meatloaf maybe like a handful of times. All I remember about meatloaf is it was like meatloaf Mondays or whatever at school. You know, like the cafeteria meal was like meatloaf Mondays. but I never got it. I just knew it was there and I would smell it. Again, I'm sure, look, if you want to make me a meatloaf, I will eat it. But I'm not going to say that I would slather some mayonnaise on it. I had a college roommate who, if you even began to say the word mayonnaise, she would physically throw up because she thought it was so gross.
I love mayonnaise.
I now dislike it only because every time I think about mayonnaise, I think about my roommate throwing up, and that grosses me out. Not because mayonnaise is gross.
Like if I get a sandwich, I usually get extra mayo. I love mayo and mustard together on basically anything.
I mean, mayo, when I don't know it's on there, because just the whole Pavlovian response of my roommate vomiting, when there is mayonnaise and things, it's delicious. Like pesto mayonnaise on any sort of a sandwich. Oh, so good.
I mean, like an aioli is basically mayonnaise.
It
right?
is.
I mean,
it is. That's just a fancy way of saying mayonnaise.
Okay, continuing the eating discussion, and I doubt you have ever, well, I'm not going to say.
Well, let's see. I don't know.
We'll see. Greg wants to know, if you were a Jell-O shot, which one would you be and why?
There are different kinds other than by color?
I was going to say the same thing.
I only know of them. I mean, I don't know if this is just a college thing, but Jell-O shots, I guess, are always, I always remember them as being green. Is that just because, maybe just because in my small college
green and
town,
red, you know?
Green, I could see red too, but it was always, I just remember it always being green. I've done some pretty crazy things that are not Jell-O shot related. That
I love Jell-O shots.
I mean, Jell-O's delicious, so, you know, Jell-O shots.
I wouldn't want to be a Jell-O shot because then someone would eat you.
Someone would eat you. But other than it being a different color, I do like green Jell-O. I'll say that much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like Jell-O unless it is in a shot form, really.
So. I guess I'm not going to say the other thing because then people will hate on me if you thought that the chicken story was bad.
You can do that in After Dark.
This is a really one. But like instead of Jell-O so the college that I went to had a lot of traditions. None of them probably healthy, but two particular, because we are now in the holiday season. I'm going to share two of the, don't do this at home, kids. But I guess while other colleges were just doing Jell-O shots, red and green for your festive Jell-O shots, the two holiday themed party activities, I guess you'll call them, that we did at every like holiday party from Thanksgiving until, you know, finals, was we would go sledding inside, downstairs, on live Christmas trees, because someone had bequeathed a Christmas tree farm to our school, so everyone got a free Christmas tree. And so we would quite literally, I lived in one of these houses. This is why you should never rent a house to college student. Everyone brought their own Christmas tree, and you drag it up the staircase indoor. This is like Home Alone style. And everyone would pile on after having a lot of Jell-O shots and ride down on an 8-foot tree with lots of branches down a indoor staircase. We did this many times. And then the other thing we did, this is a lot more dangerous. Definitely don't do this, but you would have Christmas lights up, the like little string of lights at parties. And the party trick that everyone did was you would go bite Christmas lights. Did you do that at your college?
No, I did not. At the University of Alabama, we did not bite Christmas
I will
lights.
say, when we went I'm not proud of this.
We just had Jell-O shots.
I was going to say, my point being that regular schools and regular people just did Jell-O shots. Those were the things that we ranked #1 party school the year I went there as a freshman. So I did not know this when I picked it. That was not why I picked it.
Now she doesn't drink.
Do you see what happens when people drink?
We really need to get the story behind the last big bender that Alice went on and why she doesn't.
Do you see why I've seen the dark side? Why? I know what happens when people drink.
There you go. All right. Well, I actually got my Christmas tree today, and that leads me into our next story next week. We have a Christmas story. So congratulations, everybody. It's going to be a Christmas story. You're going to love it. If you have any thoughts about this case,
this is no Hallmark.
this is not a Hallmark story. If you have thoughts about this case, shoot us an email, prosecutorspod@gmail.com, @prosecutorspod for all your social media. If you want to watch us record these episodes, join Patreon for as little as $3 a month. If you really don't want to see us record these episodes, but you hate ads, you can also join Patreon for $3 a month, and you'll get the episodes early and ad-free. free. If you want to talk about this, criticize me for my position on the family in this case, join the gallery, and you can do that all you want. We would love to see you there. All right, Alice, before we sign off, is there anything else you want to say?
Thanks for joining us on this. Like Brett said, I know we were very hard on the parents. We don't know the full story. We truly don't. But I think this is a very, very good exemplar. It's just such an obvious example of someone who really needed someone to reach out. And despite many people reaching out, I think the people who he really needed to hear from didn't. Should at least be some sort of a wake-up call, because you might be the person that is the person who needs to reach out in someone's life.
And I'll say this, just to echo what Alice just said, or part of what she just said. This case has been compared to the Maura Murray case because of the car and all the weirdness and disappearing and leaving the car behind and everything. The real thing that is similar, I believe, between those two cases is in both cases, there was something going on that we don't know. There is a part of this story that is a mystery. There is a big chunk of information we don't have. If we did have it, it might not tell us where Bryce was any more than it would tell us where Maura is. But I think it would explain a lot of what happened. And we don't have that piece of information, and we may never. But I think that is my takeaway from this case, is there's a big black hole in this case. And that, to me, more than the mystery of where Bryce is that question of what that missing information is. All right, guys. Well, like I said, we'll see you next week for a holly jolly Christmas story. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving.
It was. We have been eating leftovers since Thanksgiving. I think it's impossible to make a regular amount of food for Thanksgiving.
It is impossible.
But I made a fried... I learned this from a neighbor in D.C. I don't even know their name because they lived like several doors down from us. And they like knocked on our door on Thanksgiving night. It was like 9 p.m. We had a newborn at the time. So like time meant nothing. And they're like, hey, our tradition is we make fried turkey ramen on Thanksgiving, like late night. You want to come over? Best ramen I've ever had.
That's awesome.
So I've made ramen from the turkey carcass, and then you fry up the leftover turkey, and then you do all the other stuff, vegetables, corn, whatever you want in the runny boiled egg in there, and it's just like that's what I look forward to with Thanksgiving.
days are brutal.
So if you're feeling frugal,
stream Pluto TV. Stream Pluto TV. Stream Pluto TV for free.
Stream blockbuster hits like 21 Jump Street, Ted, The Expendables, and so much more on Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.